Up next, we're going to talk about the latest news out of the Trump administration, where they're now going after the chair of the Federal Reserve, America's central bank, Jerome Powell, for an alleged criminal investigation, alleging that he potentially lied to Congress, which is a crime. And this all does come in the context of Trump and Jerome Powell pretty openly beefing, with Trump pressuring him and wanting him to cut interest rates to juice the economy, and Jerome Powell wanting to keep rates low, and he gets to decide because the Federal Reserve operates independently of the executive branch for different economic reasons, like preventing a resurgence in inflation. However, this criminal prosecution that looms is apparently so significant that Powell has come out and made a statement to the public, and this feud continues to escalate in a really big way that's actually dividing opinion among Republicans. So we're going to discuss, first let's watch a report from CNN that also includes a significant chunk of Powell's video remarks. Let's look.
The U.S. Justice Department has opened a criminal investigation into the Federal Reserve and its chairman, Jerome Powell. It's over the Fed's $2.5 billion renovation of its Washington, D.C. HQ. A Justice Department spokesperson wouldn't comment specifically on the investigation, but they told CNN the Attorney General wants to, quote, prioritize investigating any abuse of taxpayer dollars. Powell testified before Congress in June, saying the renovation involved various agencies and that the costs had changed over time. He says this investigation is just the latest pressure tactic in an ongoing struggle with the White House.
On Friday, the Department of Justice served the Federal Reserve with grand jury subpoenas, threatening a criminal indictment related to my testimony before the Senate Banking Committee last June. That testimony concerned in part a multi-year project to renovate historic Federal Reserve office buildings. I have deep respect for the rule of law and for accountability in our democracy. No one, certainly not the chair of the Federal Reserve, is above the law. But this unprecedented action should be seen in the broader context of the administration's threats and ongoing pressure. This new threat is not about my testimony last June or about the renovation of the Federal Reserve buildings. It is not about Congress's oversight role. The Fed, through testimony and other public disclosures, made every effort to keep Congress informed about the renovation project. Those are pretexts. The threat of criminal charges is a consequence of the Federal Reserve setting interest rates based on our best assessment of what will serve the public, rather than following the preferences of the president. This is about whether the Fed will be able to continue to set interest rates based on evidence and economic conditions, or whether instead monetary policy will be directed by political pressure or intimidation. I have served at the Federal Reserve under 4 administrations, Republicans and Democrats alike. In every case, I have carried out my duties without political fear or favor, focused solely on our mandate of price stability and maximum employment. Public service sometimes requires standing firm in the face of threats. I will continue to do the job the Senate confirmed me to do, with integrity and a commitment to serving the American people. Thank you.
We're thinking about bringing a gross incompetence, what's called gross incompetence lawsuit. It's gross incompetence against Powell. I'd love to fire him, but we're so close, maybe I still might.
So you have Powell's side of the story there, and I'm going to give you my take, but I do just want to lay out both sides of what's happening here first. Now, the DOJ hasn't released many details, but we do have the thing that kicked this all off, which was a Republican Congresswoman's criminal referral to the DOJ, and that is a Rep. Anna Paulina Luna. Here's from her website. This is from July of 2025. Representative Anna Paulina Luna refers Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell for criminal investigation over false testimony. She writes, on Saturday, July 19th, 2025, U.S. Representative Anna Paulina Luna, Florida 13th District, formally submitted a referral to Attorney General Pam Bondi requesting a DOJ investigation into Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome H. Powell for potential perjury and making false statements to federal officials. The referral cites Powell's sworn testimony before the Senate Banking Committee on June 25th, 2025, in which he denied the inclusion of luxury features such as a VIP dining room, premium marble, water features, and a roof terrace garden in the controversial controversial $2.5 billion renovation of the Federal Reserve's Eccles building. However, official project documents submitted to the National Capital Planning Commission directly contradict his statements. Powell also falsely claimed that the Eccles building never had a serious renovation, despite a major overhaul between 1999 and 2003. And finally, she concludes, these are not minor misstatements. Rep. Luna said, Chairman Powell knowingly misled both Congress and executive branch officials about the true nature of a taxpayer-funded project. Lying under oath is a serious offense, especially from someone tasked with overseeing our monetary system and public trust. So that statement from Representative Paulina Luna probably sums up the best factual allegations against Jerome Powell. What are they saying? And now I'll tell you my take on this. First, I find the Congresswoman's claims that the Department of Justice is investigating of Jerome Powell for to be highly dubious. So it all dates back to this testimony that he gave before Congress. And it's true, lying to Congress knowingly is a crime. Simply stating something incorrectly or mischaracterizing something in a debatable way is not a crime. You have to prove that someone knowingly deceived Congress. And nowhere in any of this does she have any evidence that he knowingly lied. She can't prove his intent to deceive. So, for example, when they talk about the Eccles building and whether it had been renovated or not, there's two issues with that statement that they're saying he lied. One, it's also possible he just forgot or didn't remember that they'd done work back in 1993 to it. Or two, it's also possible that, 1999 and 2003 is when it was renovated, according to these critics. But then I read about this more, and there's also dispute about whether that constituted a renovation or whether that was just infrastructure work rather than a full revamp that constituted a renovation. It gets into the weeds here, but it's very hard to prove that someone lied about that when it's debatable what even maybe he just didn't think that the work that was done back then constituted a renovation. And there's some disagreement about what that means. All of this comes down to a bunch of nitty-gritty details. Same with this stuff about the garden project and other things. They didn't end up happening, a lot of that. And it was in some document that he said there were no plans. Maybe he just wasn't aware of the plans. You would have to prove that he knowingly knew about those plans that ultimately didn't happen and then tried to cover it up to Congress. More importantly, guys, I can't litigate all of this, but I can tell you this. The truth is no one gives a shit about any of that. No one gives a shit about the Eccles building. Donald Trump, Pam Bondi, the Department of Justice don't care about that. They literally have people in the administration profiting off crypto scams. Okay, and you're telling me they care about whether Jerome Powell in his testimony was correct about saying whether the building was renovated in 1999. It's a pretext. It's something they concocted to go after him because they are mad at him for other reasons. And that is wrong. That is politicization and weaponization of government in the same way they complained about, sometimes rightly, that Democrats did to Trump and Trump officials. They're doing the same thing to go after Jerome Powell. And it's really a problem, not just because that's a perversion of what government is supposed to be, but also because it has global economic ramifications, and it will hurt the U.S. and the world economy if people think that the Federal Reserve is politicized. But I will say kudos to him. And it's weird for me to find myself in this position defending Jerome Powell because I think he's been a terrible chair of the Federal Reserve. I think he did a terrible job during the COVID pandemic, just printing trillions of dollars and worsening inflation. But here, he is standing firm against political pressure. He's not caving to the Trump administration. And there's arguments about whether the Fed should even exist. But to the extent that we have a Federal Reserve that sets monetary policy, I think it is probably a lot better that it is set independently based on what they think about the economy than by the whims of the president, who he has an incentive not to think about long-term economics, but just to want the economy juiced before the midterms, whereas they're not thinking about those political considerations. At least they're not supposed to be. Again, none of this is a defense of Jerome Powell and saying he's amazing or saying the Fed is perfect. Certainly not, but this is a political sham. this persecution or prosecution, if it advances, it will fail in court. It will not go anywhere. And it is a little bit banana republic-y to have your president prosecuting people for pretextual reasons because they're not doing his bidding. That's really bad. And I really do think it's something that the Trump administration is going to live to regret. Hence why many Republican senators are even who are big Trump supporters and support almost all of his agenda are breaking with him on this. Here is Senator Tom Tillis. He wrote on X, if there were any remaining doubts whether advisors within the Trump administration are actively pushing to end the independence of the Federal Reserve, there should be none now. It is now the independence and credibility of the Department of Justice that are in question. I will oppose the confirmation of any nominee for the Fed, including the upcoming Fed chair vacancy, until this legal matter is fully resolved. Senator Lisa Murkowski, a moderate from Alaska, she said in a tweet, after speaking with Chair Powell this morning, it's clear the administration's investigation is nothing more than an attempt at coercion. If the Department of Justice believes an investigation into Chair Powell is warranted based on project cost overruns, which are not unusual, then Congress needs to investigate the Department of Justice. The stakes are too high to look the other way. If the Federal Reserve loses its independence, the stability of our markets and the broader economy will suffer. So I agree with this. I think this is a big misstep from the Trump administration, and that this case isn't going to go anywhere, but will damage the independence and credibility of the Department of Justice, will give the impression, understandably so, that Trump is weaponizing the government the same way he said he ran against. And I think it's all a massive mess. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed, hit the like button while you're at it, and yada, yada, yada.